So I'm working on my first album since over 11 years ago, and I'm super excited. Hi guys, my name is Rachael Alexander, artist and Mosaic soul mentor, aka spiritual teacher and all that stuff with flair. On this channel, just mostly an artist and creative and spiritual person who talks about and journeys and documents her life. So I'm super excited because I've been working on this album probably, or EP, probably for, I want to say 4 years. And when I say working, I've been writing songs probably for this album for the last 4 to 5 years. So it's pretty cool to be bringing it up. The album that I'm currently working on, I kind of want to release like 2 different albums or EPs this year. And the first one, I'm thinking about calling it Narcissist. Let me know if you have any other suggestions. But the album is basically sort of documenting my time of like living in a interesting situation, or just being in a relationship with someone who I would consider to have NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, but just also breaking free of that and just sort of my journey of living with that in human form or whatever, and a lot of sort of the emotions that come with that, the ups and downs and other stuff like that. And then I have another album that I don't want to yet reveal the name for yet because it's still an incubation. A lot of creative juice is coming behind that. But yeah, so I'm working on that, and I have a lot of what I'm realizing, because I just came back from a festival today, the jazz festival that I hung out with my friend with, and I was recognizing that I really struggle with perfectionism still, and I didn't even know that I struggle with it, because there's been many times where I've gotten divine downloads and inspirational hits to like put out music or create something, and I wouldn't do it because in my mind I either didn't have the budget that I wanted to like pull it off in a certain way, or 2, I struggle with like figuring out how all the pieces were going to come together. And if I didn't have it immediately in my mind, I would like dismiss it or dismiss my creative like inspiration, which is interesting. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit, why I think it's a part of the perfectionism thing, that I'm a recovering perfectionist, that I don't even know that I do these things. Like it's almost like automatic, you know, that I'm letting go and releasing in my energy. Like last week I had the most interesting and wonderful breakthrough that I didn't even know that I needed in regards to being older and being a musician, right? As a woman, you know, I was talking to my good friend today about it and before. And as a woman in the music or entertainment industry, there's always this sort of stigma about being young, right? Like if you're older than, 25, you're considered to be seasoned. Or if you're older than 30, then what are you doing? If you're older than 40, like forget about it, right? Like there's this stigma, especially in the entertainment industry, that, you shouldn't pursue the arts if you're not young, right? If you're not under a certain age. And I feel like that's also in other industries as well. There's this sort of stigma, because I thought about, at some point in my life, I thought about going back to school to become a doctor. I don't want to do that. But I remember, feeling that way too. And I feel like, this thing that I'm completely releasing now, I can talk about it. I usually only like to talk about things that I'm healed around, not when I'm still wounded, but when I'm healed. But like the whole aging thing and stuff, I felt like that was the stigma that I used to have, a previous version of me used to have. Even when I was like 5 or 10, thinking like, oh, or 12, because I used to really be into Disney, and wanting to be a Disney star or something like that. And I think I was like 10 or 11. And like at that time to join Disney, you needed to be younger or something. And I always used to think, oh, I'm too old, I'm too late, it's too late, or all this other stuff. So I've been having that like old paradigm thing that I really broke through last week. And it was really beautiful to like release a lot of that bullshit around it, right? But it's even integrating into my system even today. Like it feels even more so. So coming back from the jazz festival, which I always love the jazz festival because I just love seeing live music. I love hearing live music. It's a wonderful thing, but the thought that occurred to me was that, you know, I'm tired of being sort of like a nobody, if that makes sense, like in the entertainment industry or just in general, like feeling like, oh, I'm nobody, I don't matter, or I haven't made an imprint in the world, I haven't made a splash in the universe. And so I felt like, you know, this nobody, which kind of alludes to that song. I'll link it up here wherever, that cover song that I sang by SZA, but you know, feeling like a loser or whatever. And I don't feel like a loser. Like, it was just a thought that was passing, but it was just, I was like, the thought that was passing was like, oh, I'm tired of being a nobody. I want to be somebody. I want to be someone great, you know. Like, I had that thought that passed, you know, like. And so I've been, one of my goals or intentions for this year was to, like, you know, complete and finish my first album, right, or EP, that I haven't done in over 10 plus years, right? So it involves me, like, you know, being in the studio, creating music, working with other musicians, right? It's like this whole process, right? When you're creating an album, it's labor intensive. A lot of work goes into it. A lot of creativity goes into it. A lot of hours goes into it. And it's really funny because I feel like the music or entertainment industry is one of the most interesting industries, because many artists or musicians and creatives who create music put so much time and effort and energy into something that has very little return on investment, right, of that time and effort and energy, right, and money also, right, like especially if you're spending money to be in the studio or work with other musicians and stuff like that. So it's interesting. I think one of the reasons why I kind of took so long to get back to it was not because of money or time or resources, but because of the sort of labor intensiveness of it, and self-doubt, and that whole energy of being in that whirlwind of that relationship as well, and losing myself and rediscovering myself and all this other stuff, and having a spiritual awakening and what that means, and feeling this sort of lack of desire, right? Or having a desire arise, but it not sticking hard enough for me or landing long enough for me to want to do something with that desire, right? But like, I think that was one of the reasons why it took me so long to get back to this point where I'm like, I'm excited. Let's go. I'm working on music. I'm putting stuff out. And, you know, it's like this whole process, right? And so it's interesting because being a singer, songwriter, composer, and all this stuff has always been one of the dreams that I wanted to actualize and realize. And I remember telling one of my good friends earlier this year, I was like, well, I wrote out this like long list of things that I want to complete, right? Like, if I could complete this in a year, it would be great. I was like, but I told my friend earlier this year, I was like, a lot of these things are really huge goals, right? I was like, if I can accomplish like one or two, like it would have been a great year, you know, like, cause my goals are like complete album, create a course around the album, get 3,000 fans, and you know, all this other stuff, you know. It's like, these are not small goals, but at the same time they're not huge goals either. But it's like, you know, especially like, it's like when you have left something behind and now you're coming back to it, it's like reworking a muscle that has quote unquote atrophied or whatever. And so it's an interesting journey that I wanted to sort of document, like the whole thought process of like, what is going on with me and my music, and what am I working on currently. And so, yeah, my current, I think, body of work that I really want to put out is called Narcissist. And it's all about, you know, that whole journey and what it was like being with, you know, in those types of relationships, and not just romantic relationships. I've also had, you know, narcissistic friendships and all that stuff like that, and kind of waking up out of it and then like healing from it and coming back to myself and stuff like that. So it's an interesting journey. And also another reason why I partially didn't even release this project, because the spiritual side of me that's like super spiritual and stuff, like woo-woo and stuff like that, doesn't like the label narcissist, doesn't like the idea of being abused, right? Or any of that. Like if you know, study psychology and stuff like that, like with narcissism, you're taught that, you know, you have been psychologically abused, own that shit, otherwise you can't really heal from it. And so like on a spiritual level, it puts me in a like victim mentality, and I didn't really like that, because I'm the one who chose to be in that relationship, and I take full 100% responsibility for being and choosing to do certain things, you know. And so a lot of what I talk about in the songs that I wrote over the last how many ever years around that was addressing just certain emotions and things that were darker, right? Like not like the light bringer or the light worker that I am. So I didn't really feel comfortable in talking about a lot of that, or like portraying myself in this light, or portraying myself as this less than character, or this person who has flaws, right? Like, or, you know, all this other stuff. So I didn't really want to bring that to the public, because I didn't want to showcase myself as this person who has traversed this journey, right? So that was part of why I didn't really release it. And when the divine download or inspiration came to me around the whole album or EP, right? So I'm over that now, if you hadn't tell, and I'm excited and ready to like bring forth. But yeah, that was partial part of the reason why I didn't really, you know, work hard on it or put more effort into bringing it to light, even though it was a huge part of my human journey over the past 10 years, you know what I mean? So I think for me, it's a cathartic album. It's not a dark album. I think it is a dark album, but it's one that sheds light on dark experiences, that has a cathartic and healing experience with it. And I feel like it needs to be talked about, because I feel like so many women in general have journeyed down this path that I went through as well. And I feel like it can be healing in a lot of ways by bringing it forth, you know what I mean? Even if it only touches one other person, like that was my job. That was the reason why I felt divinely inspired to share it, right? Like it's not my job to be, you know, all about, oh, well, who is going to like it and all this other stuff. But, you know, like, so I had to work through my emotions on that and release a lot of the guilt or shame around not being perceived as spiritual, because I'm writing a darker album, which is also why I started this channel. I started this channel way before I started my Divine Earth School channel, but like why I wanted to get back on this channel and start sharing more of my life's journey, because I didn't want it to be, when you're talking about spirituality and wellness and a lot of times it's not really looked healthily upon when you talk about darker human experiences. You're supposed to be like this light worker and light being. And even though I am a light worker and light being, I experience dark, you know, the dark aspects of life as well, and the integration of that, you know. And so I wanted to have spaciousness to be able to share that here. So yeah, I'm excited about this new album and that I'm going to be sharing in the coming months, and the whole concepts behind it or whatever. And as I was like reading some of like this brand photo shoot thing that I created on it, and like the concepts that I had behind it, I was like, oh my God, Rachel, this is fire. Like, wait, why haven't I released this yet? Like, what is wrong with me? Like, you know, like that whole idea that I talked about in my last video about, you know, just having like hard drives worth of like content that's just like needs to be put out into the world, you know what I mean? So yeah, I'm excited, and yeah, stay tuned for my next video. One of the things that I wanted to share, and as a piggyback off of the first part of the video, is recognizing the thought of, I want to mean something, or I'm tired of being a nobody, right? And it's interesting that that thought came up, because I recognize the root of it, whereas there's this programming in our society that your self-worth is based upon what you do and the things that you create and stuff. So I'm aware of that. And I don't think that's where the thought was sort of originating from. Well, it's partially that, but I think for me, because I'm so self-aware and I don't really care what other people think about me and at this stage in my life, and I just want to be more of who I'm here to be, where I think the thought was coming from, or this desire was coming from, was the desire to be more of who I truly am. And so I think part of being a recovering, I don't even claim that label, but part of the perfectionism and the paralysis of perfectionism is you stop yourself from creating, and you stop yourself from moving forward in life, in a sense, because there's this fear of judgment, there's this fear of criticism and all this other stuff. And even though those things don't matter to me as much now, I think the huge underlying picture here is my own self-criticism, my own self-judgment. It was like almost like I wasn't giving myself permission to be me, right? And even though I claim this label of Mosaic soul since I was 13, there was still a huge part of me that did not embrace my Mosaic soul nature, right? There was this huge part of me that is still integrating, to be honest. The fact that I'm multi-talented, multi-creative, whatever, multi-passionate, and feeling guilty and shameful around that. Like, why do I have this vision or these creative ideas and then I move on to something else and another creative vision happens in a completely different field, right? Like, and stuff like that. And I would sort of beat myself up around that, you know? And so recognizing sort of where a lot of this sort of self-judgment was happening. So it was only like perfectionism was one layer, but this self-judgment that was underlying it was happening as well. And so part of that was me recognizing that, you know, I was comparing myself to others, right? Like having this sort of self-criticism and comparison of recognizing that, one, I'm not meant to be nobody else because I'm me. So if I was supposed to be somebody else, I would be somebody else, right? Like that's a part of it. So the comparison thing just sort of dies in the face of that recognition. But it was almost like when you see other people have success in a certain field or a certain area, you think, oh, their way of doing it is the blueprint for success, right? Which is why I always say, listen to your inner guidance, follow your heart, flow with what feels good, let go of what doesn't, because we all each have our own unique soul blueprint. We all each have our own unique way of doing things, right? So somebody else's blueprint might be all nice and cute and useful for them, but it's not your blueprint. Maybe you can take little nuggets from what they're doing, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be your unique path, right? And so that's something that I had to recognize in my own sort of self-recognition of this journey of, you know, recognizing the perfectionism and how like that mindset is really detrimental because it really stopped me from pursuing and sharing my gifts and sharing my creativity with the world, right? And this self-judgment that I had around not only being a multi-passionate or Mosaic soul, but also in the sense of, you know, having that self-judgment that I was sharing around being spiritual, right? And what quote unquote spirituality means, right? And also this whole self-judgment around pursuing multiple things, right? Like not even just multiple things, but sharing like the journey or sharing my process and feeling like everything needs to be polished and perfect and everything has to look a certain way in order for me to even show up online or show up in any form of fashion, right? And also one of the things that I've already kind of touched on a little bit, but is this recognition that I'm not doing this for the thumbs up, thumbs down, all that stuff like that. But it was like, I wanted to like me, right? And so that recognition of the thought of, I'm tired of being a nobody, right? That thought was more so not from a place of, oh, I want millions of people to follow me and da 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 da. That would be great. My ego would love it, right? And I would enjoy it, right? I'm not gonna deny that. But it was more so is, I want to feel me. I want to feel like I'm somebody. I want to feel like who I'm here to be matters. Like I'm being who I'm supposed to be, right? And it's not necessarily that, you know, accolades and the awards and all that stuff is not necessarily what I'm chasing after, but it's like, for me, what is the desire, I think underneath that is wanting to leave some sort of legacy, right? When I die, right, what will my life have been represented, right? Will I have things that show for it? And it's not even that, like, let's say I never release anything for the rest of my life. Technically, my worth is I'm still valuable because I exist, right? But on a human level, like on a soul level, right? I feel like I'm a creative, right? I'm here to create. I'm here to share my creations. And so that sort of self-judgment that was there was hindering that creative spark, right? That I've been having for years, right? Like this creative juice, right? I would get divine downloads all the time of songs, of cover songs, of my own music, of music videos I want to put out, of skits and sketches that I want to put out, of all these things, right, that I'm just sitting on. And there's nothing wrong with, you know, the timing or whatever. I've healed a lot around that, but I'm recognizing that that's where the root of where that thought came from was like, I'm tired of being a nobody, was like more so like, I'm tired of not being in like, you know, the thrill of the passion, the thrill of just allowing the creativity, the creative spark to happen, and me immediately acting on it because it feels so juicy and it feels so fun, and then me immediately putting it out into the world because that also feels fun and juicy, right? And not necessarily because of the likes or any of that stuff, but just that mode of, you know, idea or creative download landing in my mind, my body, and me getting excited and passionate about it and doing something with it, right? Where the disconnect was happening was the divine download would happen. I would physically get excited. I'd probably even record something on my phone about it, right? But I wouldn't do anything with it, right? Like the idea would just be like, I have collections of just data on, you know, my hard drives or like my cloud drives and stuff like that, right? And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm recognizing that everything has its own divine time. But like where I'm at in this stage of my journey is not because of, oh, my self-worth is derived from me doing, but it's more so I feel alive. It feels good. It feels juicy to follow divine inspiration. You know what I mean? And so that's where, you know, this recognition of, you know, the paralysis of perfectionism, you know, and I remember my divine team talking to me about this a while ago about, you know, how I was literally stopping the creative flow. Like I was stopping the creative flow because of this self-judgment, because of this perfectionism, right? And I remember them talking to me about that like habit that I had, you know, and because I was stopping the creative flow, I was stopping my joy. I was stopping the joy of being, the joy of existing, the joy of birthing something into the universe, you know. And it's not to say that I must birth something into the universe in order to matter. That's not where this is coming from. It's more so, it's like taking a bird that naturally sings and then like taping its beak and like never letting it sing. Eventually it's not going to be like, you're like closing off your gift, right? Like that's what I was essentially doing to myself, right? It's like chopping off my beak, right? So yeah, so that was one thing I wanted to talk about. And so also, so part of this, you know, healing around this perfectionism is embracing imperfection, right? And not, and embracing my own vulnerability and embracing my humanity, right? I came here to have the freaking human journey. So why not share that journey if I feel so inspired to do so, right? And not feel like I'm less than, or I'm, you know, I'm less spiritual, or I'm less of a light worker, or I'm less of a blah, 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 fill in the blank. I'm less of a powerful, strong Black woman. I'm less of a whatever you want to call it, because I have flaws, or because I'm, you know, I am vulnerable, or because I go through dark periods in my time, or I make choices that aren't necessarily in alignment with my higher self, right? Like showing these aspects of myself and embracing that I'm not fucking perfect. Like nobody's perfect, right? This journey is, we're here to, actually it's perfect in the fact that we're imperfect, right? We're perfect in our imperfections, right? So it's like embracing all of that is what's helping me to recognize that I'm here to do this. Like, this is what I came here for. This is what my soul decided to incarnate into this little fleshly suit to have this human journey. So stopping myself from having the human journey, right? Like, so that was really the recognition of that. And then just sort of accepting myself. So it's just this self-acceptance of my humanity, right? And acceptance of the journey, and being able to express and share who I am authentically, right? And then also in the sense of cultivating this sense of a journey mindset, right? This growth mindset, this expansion mindset of that's why I'm here. This is what I'm here for. And mistakes or failures, I don't believe in that, but you know, this idea of missing the mark or whatever, they're all a part of the journey, right? Learning and growing is all a part of the journey, right? And how shifting into that perspective is really what's allowing me to start being more creative on a day-to-day basis, because it feels fun and I'm no longer judging myself for being creative, right? I'm no longer judging myself for the ups and downs and the choices that I made that weren't necessarily what my, well, let's rephrase that actually, but nevertheless, that weren't necessarily what my mind thought it should be, right? But it was still perfect because it's where I am now. And that was the journey that led me to here, right? So if I didn't go through that, then I wouldn't be sharing this, which hopefully helps you or whoever, you know what I mean, resonates with this, right? So it's like everything that I've journeyed through is all perfect, right? It's all divine, right? Even the muck, right? Like if you think of a lotus flower that's so gorgeous, it's like sitting in the mud, right? Like surrounded by all this muck, but without the mud, it wouldn't be nourished, right? So this like everything works in tandem, you know what I mean? And so, you know, taking more risk, experimenting, sharing the journey as I'm doing now is a part of what I'm excited about doing. And, you know, the thing that kind of landed in my mind is the other day when this sort of realization or recognitions happened was I am worthy to exist, you know? And as I was sort of sharing or posting something on one of my social media channels, I remember just thinking that like affirmation like landed in my mind, you know? And it was like, I am worthy to exist. And that also means my creations, right? That also means my creative endeavors and my creative pursuits, right? And whatever form of fashion they take, right? If I talk about dark shit, it's here to heal other people, right? Like talking about, you know, something that I've journeyed or traversed through and feeling inspired to share that, it's going to help somebody, right? It's not my job to know why I feel called to talk about that. It's perfectly fine. You know what I mean? If it's not super spiritual, right? Like that was the thing. And so like I'm worthy to exist. And that includes everything that I'm like pursuing, right? Creatively and whatever, self-expression wise, right? And so it's like redefining my self-worth, not from a place of, oh, I need to do things in order to be worthy. I'm already worthy because I exist. I am worthy to exist, right? I'm worthy because I exist, right? And in that existence, recognizing that my self-worth comes from the fact that I'm here to be myself, right? I'm here to be me, right? There's no other me, like there's no other you. So be who you're supposed to be, right? And unfold in the way that you're supposed to unfold, share what you feel inspired to share, right? Like that's the journey that I'm taking, and I'm recognizing in my own journey and recognizing that's why I'm here, you know, and embracing that journey, embracing all of that and what that entails, right? Redefining your sense of self-worth. So, you know, it's funny because I wanted to kind of briefly mention, like, I've never really identified with a hustle culture because of my spiritual awakening. And I was definitely a little bit on the hustle culture in my 20s, but like because of the spiritual awakening that I had, the hugest spiritual awakening that I had back in like 2014, that kind of was birthed out of depression, it kind of stopped me from that. Like I jumped off the hamster wheel, even though I tried to get back on the hamster wheel a couple of times. Like if you've ever had a spiritual awakening, you kind of know that, I don't know, like there's this energy that's so strong within you that it's like when you can't, it's hard to go against it, right? And so I've never really embraced the hustle culture that, you know, Americans or Black women or any of that have embraced, right? That was never really my story. So a lot of like from my mid 20s up until now, I was just literally like coasting, like, you know what I mean? For the most part, like taking what life would hand me, like, you know, and not like really worrying about it or pushing myself too hard. And in that, like, I have like a different narrative. So my narrative isn't like, oh, I'm worthy to exist, not because I work too hard. Mine was more so like, stopping yourself from being who you're meant to be, right? Like, so it's like, a lot of people probably have like all these things that they've done, like they've applied for this, or they've accumulated all these assets, right? Or they've accumulated all this stuff that they would deem to be in their legacy box, right? And then for me, it's like, I have all this stuff, but it's like on my hard drive, right? Or it's all this stuff in my journals and nothing that I've actually shared with the world that I've documented. And so for me, it was sort of like the opposite journey of like, not that I need to hustle or anything like that. That's not what I'm talking about. But it's like, it was like the opposite of recognizing that I'm not here to hustle, right? But I'm here to be myself. I'm here to creatively express what I'm here to creatively express. And the more I give myself the permission to do that, the better I will feel on a day-to-day basis. The more juicy life will continue to be, right? Like, so peace and joy and sense of self-worth have already always been there, but like there's this other layer right now that's like unfolding for me, which is allowing myself to be creative, right? Allowing myself to journey and to share my journey without fear, without shame or guilt or whatever. and how I'm supposed to be perceived, right? You know what I mean? And like, that was sort of the journey for me, which is really interesting because a lot of people talk about, you know, like this hustle culture and, you know, healing from this toxic, you know, toxic overwork culture. And like, I understand like what pieces that I identify with is like self-worth, and always having your self-worth be in the fact that you're worthy to exist, not necessarily to work. If you want to work, you can, but like, you're worthy because you exist. But for me, it like manifested differently. It was like, I'm worthy to exist, and so are my creations, so is the creative juices, so are the divine downloads that I receive, right? In whatever form and fashion, it's here to be received, you know? And so it was just interesting. I wanted to share that difference in my journey. Like, I've never subscribed to the hustle culture, but for the most part, most of, at least for the last like 10 years of my life, I've never really subscribed to that. But it's funny how it's manifesting for me, where I'm like moving back into action, right? Like, after like not taking action, not that I've just been sitting on my ass and just sitting on a mountain all the time, but more so like of just being back in my creative flow, being back in my creative juices. Because a lot of times I would just be in stillness. A lot of times, like, maybe divine downloads would happen and I'm not doing nothing with it. You know what I mean? Because of this, you know, that mechanism that was happening within me, you know? So it's fun to see myself like be out of it and be sharing and growing and getting back into this mode of like creating because it feels fun and it feels juicy and it feels fun to share, and having divine downloads on how I want to show up, right? Like, a year ago, I had this divine download on my website and like what I want on it and like the graphics and that was so cool. And I still have it like in my Canva account that I came home a bit immediately after going out with a friend for lunch or whatever. And I came home and I like designed it, right? So it's like, I have this whole designed, you know, website for rachaelalexander.com or whatever. And like, I'm super excited to like bring that to life, right? So it's just interesting. So that's what I mean by like, you know, that's how mine manifested, where instead of where other people were like, oh, they were so like, they're getting off the hamster wheel. It's not that I'm getting on the hamster wheel, but I'm getting on my own unique path of like sharing my creations and doing that unapologetically, you know, and being in that mode, you know, and releasing perfectionism in the way that it hindered me in the self-judgment and the self-criticism, and redefining my self-worth. And, you know, I just want to leave you with this affirmation that really landed for me, if this is something that you have traversed or experienced, and that is, I'm worthy to exist, right? I'm worthy because I exist. Those are two affirmations. I'm worthy to exist, and I am worthy because I exist, right? And, you know, those are the things that really, the first one more so really struck with me. Already kind of grounded. I am worthy because I exist. Of course, you know, we are all worthy because we exist, because we are all divine fractals of source, right? So that already landed for me. But what really landed for me was, I am worthy to exist, right? For some reason, that shift and wording really helped. And the reason why it helped was because it was like, I'm worthy to share my life with others, right? I'm worthy to post, you know, pictures or videos of my creative journey or of my life online, right? Like, I'm worthy to exist because, you know, because I'm worthy to exist, right? Like, I have a right to be here. I have a right to share my voice. I have a right to share what I'm here to share, you know? And so that's why I was sort of landing super hard. I'm like, oh, that's so true. How have I been hiding? Which is so interesting to me, because I've never been one to hide, but it's definitely felt like something that I'm like breaking free from this cocoon, you know, breaking free from this shell that I sort of put myself in, which is perfectly fine because it's all divine. So yeah, I just wanted to finish that with that, you know, those two affirmations. So let me know your thoughts and all that good stuff in the comments. You know, if this is something that you've personally journeyed through, if, as someone who's a creative, spiritual person. I know this is a very unique journey, because I think most people are on the hustle, you know, bus, trying to get off the hustle bus. So maybe not a lot of people will resonate this. I don't know, who knows? But I'm putting it out there because I exist. I'm worthy to exist. So there we go. So I will talk to you guys next time. Peace, love, and light. And yeah, if you like this video, definitely do all the things, like, comment, subscribe to my channel, and definitely feel free to join my tribe by clicking the first link in the description box below. And I'll chat with you guys next time. Peace, love, and light.